It's here at the Technic West. I'm Bena Zaka, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge those who are joining us on the live stream, kindly made possible with support from Sunbelt Rentals. Over the past 15 years of presenting and following the weather, I have witnessed the intensified impact of the climate crisis through more frequent severe weather events like hurricanes, wildfires, and floods. The connection between our actions and these extreme events is undeniable. Rising temperatures fuel these disasters, demanding urgent action. We need widespread adaptation of sustainable practices, reduction of carbon emissions, and proactive adaptation to renewable energy. And we really need to mitigate future risks. Events like today is a wonderful place for debate and change. So I thank you for being here today. Over the past 10 years or so, I've absolutely been loving seeing Wales on television and going to the cinema and seeing Wales as the backdrop to so many productions. It just really warms my heart to see it. And while I've been presenting my radio show, I've spoken to so many people who've worked on productions here in Wales, and they always share such wonderful stories that it really warms my heart to hear that everybody's enjoying coming down from London to Wales to film with us and just loving the experience. And there are so many well-known names in the industry who have been, relocated to Wales as well because they loved it so much and they can't get enough of it. Now, filming in Wales offers so many advantages for TV and film industries. Firstly, its diverse landscape provides an extensive range of stunning backdrops. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, enriching the visual appeal of any production. From rugged coastlines to lush valleys and historic landmarks, Wales offers a natural canvas that adds depth and authenticity to storytelling. Now, Wales's rich cultural heritage and distinct identity provides unique storytelling opportunities as well. We must not forget that. So the fusion of ancient traditions, folklore, and modern life adds layers of depth, I think, to narratives appealing to diverse audiences. Moreover, filming in Wales often comes with financial incentives. This, coupled with a welcoming attitude of Welsh communities, making it the perfect location for any TV or film production. Wouldn't you agree? Aren't we lucky? Now, to open proceedings, I'm delighted to welcome Dawn Bowden, Deputy Minister for Arts, Sport and Tourism.
Diolch, Benaz, and bore da, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here at Albert's second Production Summit and the first to be held in Wales. Now, back in 2015, Wales led the world with introducing the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which placed a legal responsibility on policymakers in Wales to create interconnected solutions to improve cultural, social, economic and environmental well-being, including ambitions for a healthier, more equal, environmentally resilient society in the years ahead. And this act perfectly encapsulates what today's event is all about, working with others and taking a more joined up long-term approach so that decisions have a positive impact on people living in the future as well as those living today. Now, in line with our commitment to build a greener Wales, we must be focused on ensuring that we're all working together to minimise the impact on our environment. And of course, identifying ways in which the screen industry can succeed with sustainability at the forefront. So I was pleased when Creative Wales, along with partners Film Cymru Wales and Cluster, the predecessor to Media Cymru, won the bid for Wales to be the focus of the British Film Institute and BAFTA Albert's Screen New Deal transformation plan. The screen sector here is of huge value to our economy, and the industry has gone from strength to strength in recent years, but it hasn't been without its challenges. But Creative Wales is committed to driving inclusive and sustainable growth across the creative industry. And we're targeting support across skills and talent, diversity and inclusion, culture and well-being, and supporting a sustainable creative industries sector. As part of the findings of the Screen New Deal Wales report and its subsequent recommendations, Welsh Government funding distributed via Creative Wales will be directly invested into sustainability initiatives and projects over the next 3 years and beyond. This support, as well as that of our colleagues at Media Cymru and Film Cymru Wales with their Greening the Screen Fund and other R&D initiatives, will help towards developing solutions to address sustainability issues in the film and TV sectors here in Wales. And I'm pleased to announce that one of the suggestions to come out of the Screen New Deal Wales report is already underway. Creative Wales is providing support to 7 studios here in Wales, enabling them to participate in the BAFTA Albert Sustainable Studio Standard this year. And in doing so, the data-driven insights provided by the standard will shed light on each studio's progress in reducing their carbon footprint, and they'll become part of an industry-wide movement shaping a greener future for film and television. And you'll hear much more about this in one of this afternoon's sessions. Creative Wales is already prioritising our Wellbeing Facilitator programme, a partnership with Celt Cymru and 6 Foot from the Spotlight that enables production companies in Wales to access funding for a specially trained wellbeing facilitator to work on their productions, promoting mental health and providing wellbeing advice. We remain committed to working with colleagues in the BFI, in Arup, BAFTA Albert, Media Cymru and Film Cymru Wales in order to build a healthy, sustainable and prosperous future for the screen sector. Because true success lies in our collective efforts, forging strong partnerships with those here today and across the wider industry, paving the way towards a zero carbon, zero waste future for the screen sector in Wales and the entire United Kingdom. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you very much, Dawn. It's fantastic to hear this level of commitment as we move through the challenges and solutions throughout the day. Now, next, I would like to invite a very warm welcome to Matt Scarf, BAFTA Albert's Managing Director.
Thanks, Banaz. Thank you, Dawn. I've only literally been handed the baton of leading this incredibly important business, BAFTA Albert. It's about my 6th week, I think, and I'm enjoying every second of it. And it's also my birthday today, and there's no place I'd like to be more than in Wales. So thank you. What makes Albert unique is its role in the heart of our industry. It's the essence, a radical collaboration which brings together competitors who recognise the collective opportunity we have to make a difference with how we reduce our emissions and how we can influence suppliers and inspire our audience. So as we talk through the solutions today, I also wanted to offer some insights on where BAFTA Albert is and our direction for the next 12 to 18 months. Our small but mighty BAFTA Albert team is doing a huge amount across 3 key pillars: educate, enable, and celebrate. Educate through free industry training, education partnership with 50 universities across the UK, enabling through a variety of toolkits, not just the carbon calculator, the editorial engagement tool and studio standard, and also the biodiversity checklist, celebrating with certification, events, and case studies. We're growing rapidly. Will for change is definitely there, and I've heard it already today. We've got nearly 2,000 certifications in the bag this year, more than the previous 2 years combined, so that tells you an awful lot. But as the climate events we have all witnessed in the last 12 months show, we need to go further and we need to go faster, with an emphasis on deep decarbonisation for long-term change. Before I joined Albert, I was aware of it. I worked at ITV as the Director of Media and Creative, and I was responsible for getting our short-form productions Albert certified. In fact, we were the first creative agency in the UK to get Albert certification for its short-form productions. I did that because I thought it was important. And there are so many people in our businesses that also want to do things. They want to make change. So listen to them, help them, support them, and push them up. This year, we've undergone a major review of Albert's work and strategy, working with the Albert community, which includes the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Sky, Netflix, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Amazon Studios, a huge list, as well as smaller broadcasters and production groups. We've developed the screen industry's climate action blueprint. The intention of this is to provide an actionable framework within the TV and film industry designed to drive real change, to tackle climate impacts and reach those challenging net zero goals. I want to be really clear, this isn't just Albert's strategy. It's for the whole industry to agree with and get behind. So right now, we're sharing this draft blueprint to give those who work in television and film a chance to give feedback and help shape it before it's finalized at the end of the year. So what does this mean for Albert's strategy over the next few months? The key, as I said, is deep decarbonisation, reducing the industry's carbon footprint in its productions and supply chain, and in helping to inspire and inform audiences about tackling climate change. Through collaboration, evolving our toolkit and our training, and supporting the measurement of progress on and off screen, this is an ambitious but straightforward plan to supercharge our existing support for this industry. Today is also an important day as we've launched Screen New Deal Transformation Plan for Wales, conducted by Arup in collaboration with the BFI. The Screen New Deal for Wales sets out a path to a sustainable future for the screen industries, covering changes to transport, energy use, waste, and culture needed to meet the net zero targets, and distilling these necessary actions into a clear timeline and designed to roll out to other areas of the UK. Its recommendations include shifting to renewable energy for productions on location by replacing diesel generators with battery power or hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, in the short term, upgrading studio spaces to use less energy and generate their own, where possible, through wind and solar. A fundamental overhaul of our transport options to eliminate fossil fuels, prioritizing renewable energy sources such as electric cars and using virtual production methods wherever possible. Creating a circular approach to materials and assets used in production, establishing rental and reuse systems for set materials, costumes, and kit. Ensuring that food provided on set favors locally produced and low carbon options. Boosting the training and information available to production teams about the sustainability of existing production approaches, working with suppliers to the screen industry to reduce their waste and carbon footprints, and shifting culture with the industry to create a new sustainable standard for productions, establishing carbon budgets and harnessing the creative power of content makers and talent. I want to take a moment to thank all of those who were interviewed or contributed to the report, and in particular, the BFI and Arup. The digest of the report is available using the QR code. Should be on screen, but it will be later, and it's dotted around, and you can see it in the venue all day. And that takes us into today's discussions. What can we be doing now? What are the solutions that we can be turning to? What are the infrastructure changes that will impact how we can produce our content in the near, and as we think about the next? Today, we're focusing that particularly around skills, the next generation of sustainability skills of film and television professionals, and how we transition the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, and happy birthday to you. So to recap today's running order, you'll be able to see what's happening up on the screen. We've got some lovely breaks for you as well. And also, we'll be providing you with a vegan lunch today. I would like to apologize at this point to those of you watching on stream. We do hope you enjoy your lunch as well. I'm missing out a little bit. Now, there are a brilliant number of suppliers here today, and they are kindly wearing a purple lanyard. So if you want to go up to them and you've got any questions for them, feel free to chat at any point today. And there is more information about the suppliers that are here and what they're doing are also listed upstairs at the mezzanine amongst the exhibits, where lunch and our networking events are at the end of the day. And I'm really looking forward to chatting to some of you later as well. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our first panel onto stage, led by April Sotomayor, BAFTA Albert's Head of Industry Sustainability.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is April Sotomayor. I'm the head of industry sustainability for BAFTA Albert. A lot of my work involves industry sustainability, particularly off-screen, how we measure sort of standards, measurement, and reporting, developing curriculum and training as well for the industry, as well as looking at different projects, for example, energy, circular economy, and of course, some of the thought leadership such as the Green New Deal Wales transformation plan. So thank you so much for being here today, for your attention. It's a huge mixed audience, and I think there's something for everybody in here. So one of the things that we found with the leaders' breakfast this morning was there's a huge opportunity for engagement. And as Ed and I were chatting earlier, we don't have enough time and resource to have sustainability experts everywhere all the time. And so each of us needs to understand, what is the task and what is the opportunity and how do we actually start to take steps to implement it today and tomorrow and then further on into the future. So a lot of our focus today is on those specific recommendations in the Green New Deal transformation plan. It is a route map. It's an incredible business case in a lot of ways that has a call to action for investment and wider participation than ever before. In this first session, we've got some of the early adopters actually of some of those very recommendations that you'll be learning about very soon. And they can provide you with some very tangible takeaways around solutions. What is the right solution for the right situation? Who needs to do it? Where might you find it? What sort of issues around access are there? And how do we overcome those barriers? So I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to our panel. First up, I've got Emily Williams here, second. She's the managing director for Doing Good Catering, an Albert supplier to film and TV sets that focuses on sustainable catering. She looks at things like local sourcing and food miles to packaging, reducing the amount of packaging, fair trade. She goes beyond environmental sustainability as well into some of the social sustainability side of things, looking at donating some of their profits to tackle food poverty in Cardiff and Bristol. She's also written a really interesting guide for line producers on what sorts of questions to ask your catering supplier. So I'd suggest you check that out on their website as well. Next, we've got Ed Talfan here. He's the creative director at Severn Screen, one of Wales's leading film and TV production companies. His credits include productions such as Havoc, starring Tom Hardy and Forrest Whitaker, currently in post-production for Netflix, Pembrokeshire Murders, Hustle, Steeltown Murders, and many more brilliant shows. He's got some insights from a very practical on-the-ground level as to what you can do to empower people on set. Lesley Marr, second here, is the Director of Sustainability at NXTGENbps. She's got over 30 years in the industry. She's one of our leading suppliers for some new and used broadcast video and audio equipment that are supplied to the industry. They've also been awarded the DPP Commitment to Sustainability Accreditation Mark. And finally, we have Suzanne Dolan, Sustainability Manager at BBC Studios. She is neck deep into solutions and challenges and how to make things practical and actionable. So she's got a lot of interesting insights she'll be sharing with us today. She also played a crucial role in the testing of the early Albert calculator back in 2010, and she's continued to offer us really valuable advice on our latest release, which happened last night. She's also recently been focusing particularly on clean mobile power, looking at power monitoring initiatives, which is a bit of the boring side of things. It's not necessarily using the tech, it's actually being really efficient. And then battery power as well that informs the mobile power decarbonization strategy at the BBC Group. So to get started, I want to briefly pick up on why you got involved with sustainability. So Lesley, I'll start with you.
Wow.
You're part of the production supply chain. Why was it important to make this shift into sustainability as a business, offering a solution to the community?
So very simply, there weren't any solutions out there that I could see, that we could see as a business. And as you said, we've been working for a long time, supplying the standard camera kit, the standard, lights. And we kind of thought, this is crazy. We really need to shift and help the industry shift and help educate the industry. That's the most important thing. So probably about 2 years ago, we started looking at more sustainable products that we thought our customers would like. We're a relatively small business, and we really kind of care about our customers. It's all about customer service. So for us, we wanted to help our customers kind of move towards being more sustainable in their productions. So we kind of really mined out the best products we could to then become distributors for those, and that didn't involve just UK products. We looked overseas to see what products we could get into our armory to help the customers. So we really decided that we changed our delivery vans and everything. We just decided we would be a sustainable business, and it was the right time to do it. To be fair, I think it was probably a bit early, a couple of years ago, because people are still adopting and learning with those new technologies. But we kind of, hate to say it, been on a journey with that, and I feel that we've got to a good place right now, and now is very timely, with all the movements coming forward, that people are starting to adopt the technologies, which is brilliant.
So you find that people are asking for those,
Yeah.
you're getting the traction.
And before, it wasn't people asking us, it was more us kind of saying, what about this? Try this. Have you seen this? We'll loan this to you. And now people are actually coming to us and saying, oh, we've seen this. Could we try it, and can we use it? And so it's about building confidence.
Brilliant, trying things out. So that brings it to you, Emily, actually. So last year, we, looking at Welsh carbon footprints on food, we found that over 63 productions that happened in Wales, there was a cumulative sort of carbon impact of 400 tons, which meant about six tons per production. So it's not nothing related to sort of the overall carbon footprint. It isn't the biggest area like energy tends to be. But it does have other impacts that aren't just measured in the carbon footprint. There's also the social impact and other things. So I would love to hear from you about what you've been able to do differently to engage productions with more sustainable catering.
Okay, thank you. Well, our small company, Doing Good Catering, it's very tiny, really, but we're passionate about sustainability, and it's because we're small, it's easy to follow all the way through. So in conversations with line producers mainly, and then production managers, it's about having that conversation early, as early as you can, because if you're a sustainable caterer, what that means is that you value the social systems around sustainability. So using smaller businesses, local businesses, because that's part and parcel of what sustainability is. It's providing them with some work, and it's like, okay, it's short term, but as soon as they're able to get one little film job, then they can get another little film job, and their business can grow. And then, so you've got aspects around like that. So we talk around early, hopefully, conversations around what the numbers are going to be. Very invariably, though, one of the difficulties is that productions, when you start talking to them early on, don't necessarily know where the locations are going to be filmed, what the crew size is going to be, and that those are conversations that need to happen early if you really want good sustainable catering. Things like having a food bus is really essential. I'm always trying to encourage the line producers to have a food bus. Why? Because it cuts down on the compostables. It means you can use metal plates, metal knives and forks, and that has a huge impact. And also budget-wise, I mean, I remember a few years ago with one of the jobs we were on, which was for 13 weeks, and the compostable budget alone, so that's for doing things like getting your clamshells and your coffee cups and your knives and forks, was over £1,000 a week. Now, I think that's an awful lot of money to be throwing in a bin, frankly, and it'd be much easier and much nicer if we could just perhaps tweak certain things like having a food bus. And if you're going to have a food bus, then it kind of encourages the staff to plan so that you got not just breakfast, but maybe location lunch could be at the unit base too. And then you're saving on the mileage in terms of hot boxing, which is, in my opinion, I've got to be careful what I say, man. Not the best. Okay, if you're going to pay for caterers, you want good food. It's your army is marching on a stomach. Yeah, that's what they march on. Provide them with good food. Provide them with food which is doesn't have as many food miles as you can. So there are lots of little ways. And as you mentioned, I did write a paper because I got a bit, you know, standing on a soapbox and going, come on, people. You don't have to employ my company, but you can employ caterers who are sustainable. And it's not that difficult. So please check it out. But that's really, yeah, it's those conversations really around food buses, about the compostables, about the making sure that the waste. I mean, we've had a lovely report from Location One on a job that finishes filming tomorrow, Mr. Big Stuff in London. And yeah, we do really well. We do brilliantly in terms of keeping the waste down, minimizing the waste, making sure you've got proper food. Because if you've got proper chefs who are using knives and forks, yeah, and they are actually creating food, then they're not buying in huge, big, massive catering packs, which they then just pull out the pack, just take the packaging off, shove that in the bin, sprinkle a bit of, you know, I don't know, white pepper or whatever, and a little sprinkle of green, and ta-da! It's like, no, that's got loads of food miles. There's no provenance. You don't know where the food is coming from. You don't know what ingredients and how much the food miles are on that. So, you know, employ proper chefs. So yeah, so I could go on forever, but I won't.
We'll touch on it a little bit more around that. You made some interesting points around waste and throwing money in the bin. So let's come back to that. Ed, I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about, you know, you're running an independent production company in this massively challenging time, and yet you've taken a decision to hire a sustainability manager on set. Why now, and why was that important?
We decided to take on a sustainability manager as a full-time role within the company. We're a company of 8 people. I think it's hugely important because, I mean, in a sense, I mean, just to take one step back from that, I think I used to think change is needed, somebody else will take care of it, it'll happen, and then I'll just sign up and just go along with the party. And I think 2 things happened. One, we did a very big project in Wales called Havoc with the support of Creative Wales and Netflix. And there was a dedicated person, Tilly, put onto that job, which slowly opened my eyes to what could actually be achieved. And secondly, at the same time, was the COVID whole experience, because I'd always thought that change can't happen quickly. And actually, you realize with COVID that people said, oh, it's an existential threat. We must find the solutions tomorrow, and so we can get back into work on Monday. And I don't understand why the same urgency and existential threat isn't being talked about when it comes to the environment. You know, millions were found by broadcasters, by governments, by everything to get us back to work. And it just seems like the same passion and impetus and momentum and all those things needs to apply to addressing the, you know, what I would say is the bigger problem of, you know, climate change.
And what difference has that made to your production company?
I think it's been huge for us actually, because we get ahead of the project. I mean, ordinarily in the past, pre sort of 2021, we would sort of have a conversation. If I'm honest, we would have a conversation probably 10 days out about, oh God, what are we going to do about sustainability? How are we going to, you know, how are we going to address this? Whereas actually, you need to be months out. You need to be talking to the suppliers, and you need to be looking at your choices around locations and your everything. But if you do it, if it's lastminute.com, you're basically setting yourself up to fail. So we basically decided to bring somebody into the team full time. And sometimes from a creative point of view, I'll be absolutely honest, you're not told what you want to hear. Sometimes it's annoying because you might have a director saying, oh, I want to do this. And then the next day I want to be over there, and then we're going to splits, and we're going to do this, and we're going to travel the half of the UK. And sometimes the sustainability person is a lone voice saying that's not such a good idea. But that voice has to be in the room.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me on to sort of considering different solutions in different instances, you know, the right solution at the right time. So Suzanne, what has been your approach to tackling some real challenges in production, you know, where you've got limited budget, access, all of those things? How do you determine what the right solutions are in different situations? Because a one size fits all perhaps is not the way to go.
Yeah, sustainability in production, well, sustainability period comes down to energy, travel, materials and waste. And then for us in this very privileged industry that we work in is, you know, the climate content pledge. I think it's really about identifying what the production's biggest area of impact is most commonly is travel, but then also thinking about what area is within the production's control at that point in the process, and mirror, you know, all the previous panelist comments about being able to plan early. And different productions will consider their sustainability at different parts of the journey. And yes, we absolutely have much better success where we consider it months and months in advance. But we do sit across a huge slate of productions, and it's quite difficult to be on top of all of them all the time. But one of the things that I, you know, is my mantra to all productions, because it's not just about what's within their immediate control, but it's, you know, is the supply chain ready? Do they have the budget? And they might not be able to roll out the solution in the most perfect form on this production, but it's still worth going through the motions to look at what are the barriers, what are the costs, what do we need to put in place if we could have been able to do it, and engaging with the supply chain, supporting them with the data behind it, so that everybody involved in that production that then goes off to another production that might be with a different broadcaster, you know, can then take that learning with them. So yeah, we're trying to set up processes rather than focusing just at production level, but how we can support with supply criteria checklists, considerations that can be done much earlier on to make it easier for productions that are a freelance community to take the legwork out of it and to have better success with decarbonisation initiatives, implementation, but also data consistency.
Brilliant. So going through all the different motions, even though you know you might have a particular challenge, not giving up before you kind of out of the gate, but sort of seeing what's accessible to you. That's a really useful point. It also normalizes this kind of planning behavior and makes it, you know, introduces new ways of working, which is really what's clearly needed here. And we'd all love for this to be a really easy switch, but it is massive societal change and systems change, which is difficult. And we're also against challenges of varying levels of knowledge and understanding, some mistrust, you know, risk aversion for trying new things. So this is really a question for all of you. How do we overcome misinformation, kind of mistrust of new technologies, but not just technologies, different practices and ways of working, you know, and actually get something done? Who wants to take that first?
I'll talk about the one of the things that we're often tasked with is supplying battery generators. We've got some upstairs for you to have a look at, but just to educate people around using them and being confident using them, as opposed to using diesel. And I think it is about educating as one of the key things, and changing the way that you work. For example, you know, we all probably have experienced people overspec their power needs. And that's just a normal thing to do. And that's a normal way of working that productions have worked for many years. So they need to change the way that they work and look at monitoring their power to understand, you know, what they need, what they're using, and thinking about different ways of setting up, much in the same with catering, ahead of time, setting up their locations and setting up their power needs. And you know, there's benefits that aren't just environmental with batteries, they're silent as well. So, you know, again, you can think about a different way of setting up your location. So it is about changing the way that you work and planning ahead, but just understanding your power needs and getting a monitor on your generators, even if they are HVO or diesel. At least you're taking a step to understand that, and actually then will prove that you probably need less power than you actually spec. Therefore, you can change to a smaller battery generator than you thought you might have needed, because it's not the same as using a diesel generator. So it's all of that learning, planning, and actually changing exactly the way that you spec things, because it's different.
So this would actually be a really great segue. I know Suzanne has a slide and some experience with this very thing, generator sizing and uncertainty around all of that. Suzanne, can you pick that up?
Just worth giving a bit of context. So power's been a really big focus for us. travel is the industry's biggest area of impact, but it is quite difficult to change depending on how a production is designed and or commissioned. But power is a really tangible thing that we can impact now. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence that generators are overspec'd. They're trying to engage with highly technical people that they're doing things wrong, and that, you know, trying to get them to do something differently when actually if the solution that you propose doesn't work. I mean, I don't want to take that on my shoulders, especially if it's live transmission. We've understood that actually the data monitoring is absolutely fundamental. And there are other data monitoring companies, I'm sure there are, but there is one here today that's been fundamental in our journey, IDE, go and have a look at them upstairs. But we monitored 8 drama and comedy unit bases, really focused on unit bases because it's quite low-hanging fruit, but we have been monitoring some OBs and events. And I don't know if you want to bring up the slides, but the unit bases, the average size generator is about 100 kVA. You can see very bright pie chart. So we've got, these are the different unit base sizes, and the grey is the capacity, but the blue is the average consumption that was used in kVA, and the orange is the maximum load. So you can see that they're all massively overspec'd. And by running them inefficiently, they actually burn a lot more fuel. And because we were able to measure socket by socket, we can see that consistently costume was pulling the most, then catering, then makeup. So it was informing, you know, behavior changes, turning off your tumble dryers or putting your tumble dryers on switches, on timers. Then if you go on to the next slide. So we actually also ran some initiatives with hybridizing the generators. And I mean, I should say that these are all on HVO, which is 90% certified HVO, 90% more efficient. But by then introducing the hybrid system, and for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically bringing a battery and pairing it with your business as usual generator and then working in a smart way, we were able to save 68% fuel from that hybridizing system because you're running the generator at maximum load, which is running it more efficiently and saving fuel. Interestingly, and this has mixed messaging here, but actually if we just downsized to a 60 kVA Jenny, we would have saved 58% fuel. Now, what we have to be careful about here is that we don't just think, okay, well, we don't need to worry about the batteries and the hybridizing, we can just downsize our gens, because HVO is a transitional fuel and we must be investing in the supply chain with battery technology so that we can eventually get off of diesel in generators. But it does show that there are different solutions for different types of productions and different budgets. You know, broadly speaking, our experience has shown that it's roughly cost neutral, but it does, on the higher the cost that you've got of the battery versus the fuel savings, but it depends on the size and shape and scale of your production. If you're not in situ for a long time, then you haven't got the opportunities to make those fuel savings. So, you know, there's different thinking and consideration that has to be applied. And then I can't remember if there's one more slide or not.
Just a quick question on the previous slide as well, because you've got different departments that are impacting that consumption. How do you communicate that out, and what has the reception of that information been?
Yeah, so the critical thing is about having a meeting really early in advance, and identifying which productions are most suitable. And in one of our comedies, we actually mobilized the generator because it can be a cost prohibitive by having to move this extra battery around, but we managed to put the battery on top of one of the tugs, so that eliminated a lot of the logistical costs. But it's all about engaging with the suppliers and bringing them all together to understand the ambition. And what even we learned from doing it is there's still, it's facility vehicles, it's location services, productions, lighting and OB, but they're obviously slightly different. But even sometimes you'd still find that there was occasional a need for a little generator that would appear that you hadn't quite come under your remit. What's that one? Why has that one appeared? So yes, we've made huge leaps forward in terms of bringing the suppliers and the productions together in understanding the ambitions and giving them the data. I have learned that some other productions and suppliers that have been involved in initiatives with other broadcasters and other production companies, that they've not wanted to share their data. And I know that this is something that Steve Smith talked about earlier, about there being such a reluctance to share data, but we can't do this without the suppliers. Most of our emissions sit within our supply chain. So some of the initiatives we worked on were literally just monitoring and not really impacting, but that data is forming the basis for our decarbonisation pathway. It's also identified that actually amongst the power landscape, there's no consistency in metrics. You know, there's kilowatt hours, there's KVA, there's amps, and for, you know, this is not my area of expertise. I've become quite proficient for a layperson, but we need to set standards of the metrics that we're asking for, so it's easy to compare one production with another. And we've actually created a metric where if you divide the total kilowatt hours by the total litres of fuel per generator, you can come up with an efficiency score. So we could compare the optimization of the likes of Eurovision with Silent Witness that are totally different in size and scale, but allow, you know, can set a standard of optimization in power.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Trying new things, being informed by the data and showing the benefit is so important to better decision making and also changing habits. So I'd like to talk about a little bit about changing habits and mindset. So thinking also about, you know, catering. What we eat is clearly quite contentious in some instances. So meat-free Mondays, some love it, some hate it. Tell us a little bit about that, Emily. How do you make it more nuanced, and how might you decarbonize overall and not alienate people?
Okay, well, I would say I've used perhaps, I think Mr. Big Stuff is probably a good example of a current production that we're on, it's a Sky production, where we've been embedding very good practice from the very beginning. So there was a meeting of the sort of costumes, there was power, there was catering, there was quite a few key people at the very beginning, weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe even a couple of months before the production started, where we talked about sustainability and what we could do to reduce the carbon footprint. Good practices. I mean, it's very, there's a part of it, I suppose one of the things I find a little bit frustrating is if you look at the credits for most TV programs and films, catering doesn't even figure right at the very bottom in terms of credits. Now that says a lot to me, it does, because it shows that there's not much interest. But honestly, the amount of, like you were saying up on your screen, your slide there, catering and costumes, etc., they make a massive impact in terms of the energy usage and waste. And ways you can tackle that with catering is very, very simple. You can introduce meat-free Mondays. That's all a bit niche. It's all meat-free Monday, but you do get people moaning all the time. They want meat. So it's like, how do you do it? It's very simple. You serve chicken, right? Chicken, don't buy battery chicken. Why would you buy battery chicken? It's got no flavor. It's got no nutritional value. So what's the point? So get yourself, you know, so you have chicken maybe twice on the menu or 3 times on the menu, and you only do beef maybe once, because the carbon footprint of beef is astronomical. But there's no point going, oh, we're just going to swap meat over for vegetables, because sometimes, you know, if you're talking about, say, almonds, to produce 1 almond is 5 litres of water, right? So we've just got to get a bit wise. You know, there's no point in having asparagus on the menu, because asparagus mainly comes from Peru, unless you're getting asparagus from the UK, in which case it won't fit the budget because it's too expensive. So the conversations, please. So if you leave with one thing from me, is first of all, only, and I'm saying this because I believe this very strongly, if you really want to make a change, you need to start booking Albert companies. The point that a company decides to go through rigorous reforms and changes and around sustainability, they make the effort. And if you don't bother seeking out an Albert approved or an Albert supplier, then you should be asking yourself, what really is your commitment to sustainability? Because you've got more, I'm perhaps one of a couple of catering companies in Wales on the Albert list. I would love there to be 30 catering companies on the Albert list, 40 catering companies, because at least then we know that we're moving in the right direction. We can't afford to be selfish. And this whole thing about data sharing, exactly the same thing. Everyone's like this, oh no, let's keep it all to ourselves. And it's like, that's not the way to solve a problem. Let's have some transparency. Let's talk about how we can make things better. I have no issues having conversations, as you can probably tell, with anybody about sustainable catering. I don't care if you don't book my company. Genuinely, I'd love you to, but I want you to actually start. I want there to be more caterers that are sustainable, because the impact is not just on the quality of the food, it's making sure that there's diversity within your teams. How many times do you see Black and minority ethnic people in the film industry, and you might find one sound engineer or one camera trainee, and the rest of them are doing the COVID cleaning or doing that sort, or working maybe a little bit in catering, maybe not, but you don't see them elsewhere. We've really got to start tackling these issues instead of saying, oh, well, let's have a discussion, and then it goes nowhere. So make the change. If you're going to book catering companies, or you're going to book lighting companies, or you're going to book whatever it might be, power companies, make sure that they are sustainable. Yeah, if you want to get an idea, and if you don't have any knowledge on that, ask someone who does, because I will talk the hind legs off any animal to say to them, please, please, please. There's companies will turn around. We've lost a number of jobs because we're not the cheapest. Of course we're not. We pay the highest rate nationally of any catering company to our staff, standard. Why? Because I'm not going to work for £15 an hour. So why should I pay staff £15 an hour? Yeah, especially in the film industry, where actually people get paid really good wages. Yeah, so you've got to have integrity. I don't want to buy chicken from bookers. So give us enough time to speak to the local farmers. When we did the Men movie, yeah, what's the name? Anyway, we did the Men movie. Don't know if some of you have seen it. It's quite good. They were fantastic. They gave us so much lead time. So we had deals with the local butcher, who also owned the local greengrocers. So we got all of this produce off his farm. He then took all of our waste peelings for his chickens and his pigs. Apparently, you're not allowed to do that. That's what he did. We made sure we employed staff locally. We were able to turn around and say, right, we're going to be in this location. This unit base is here for 5 weeks. Great. Let's put it out there and let's get some local people employed. You know, if you want us to be sustainable, if you want the industry to improve on not just producing content, but actually improving people's lives, then start thinking about sustainability and start using companies that are Albert approved, and start talking to idiots like me or people who go, wah, 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 wah. Because I'm not going to turn around to you and say, you've got to use me. I just want the industry to improve. So as I said before, I could go on and bang on, but really I've written a paper for anyone to read. It's on our website, doinggoodcatering.com, or you can get it off the Albert website, and look at how you can improve. And when you're speaking to catering companies, you've got your checklist. I've given it to you. You can ask them these questions, give them enough time, ask the questions, get your production working better. That's all I've got to say. Really.
So suppliers are clearly an area where there's a whole, as I mentioned before, it's a holistic effort, really, and engaging with suppliers. And one of the things that the Green New Deal transformation plan highlights is actually some of the co-benefits alongside environmental and social, is just the fact that you've got revenue flowing into local communities and you're supporting local people, and that is having an impact, on people. And actually, you mentioned something really interesting in the leaders' breakfast this morning about lack of demand here in Wales, that actually your work is coming from, London or Yorkshire.
Absolutely.
Other areas. So that's a really interesting thing that
we've got, because if you do the sustainability thing for us, yeah. So our first jobs were in London, because it was all right on to have a sustainable catering company. And all we do are jobs in London. We have never been asked to quote for a film job or a series in Wales. Now I don't understand why that is, let alone the diversity that we tick all the boxes. Okay, I'm not a lesbian, but I do tick other boxes. The reality is that we are constantly having to travel. Now that's not sustainable. Taking our trucks to London all the time, moving our staff. They're all living in Bristol and Cardiff. But it's like, come on, Wales, come on.
There's definitely a bigger picture. So I'd love to hear from you on this, Ed, in terms of implementing some of these solutions. You've got a sustainability manager making some key recommendations. How do you focus on, what is your decision-making process when it comes to sustainable solutions and suppliers?
Just on the point about catering, I think one of the important things to do during a shoot is to actually feed back to crew so they actually understand the difference that's being made. I mean, one of the things that we do, all of our waste food, all food waste goes to an anaerobic digester locally, and all of the surplus food goes to a local homeless charity. When that narrative is fed back daily to crew, they think about, they think about the good that they're doing. There is actually a feel-good factor in that. And I think you have to kind of, you can hit them with data and you can hit them with all sorts, but actually if you hit them in the heart, they actually, certain, stories land.
Feeling like they're part of the solution, which is absolutely critical. And it also sort of inspires people to engage and perhaps go a little bit further in their role. So I'd like to ask you again, Ed, about training. So we've got a section on that later in the day with my colleague Steph. There were some big changes that you were able to implement with Havoc, partly because of Welsh training and funding opportunities. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what impact and what difference that made to you, and what can others learn from that?
It was kind of a binary thing. Before then, we'd never had a dedicated person. And suddenly we were on a production where we had a single dedicated person. And then we had 2 or 3 people that were able to come in and work sort of for that person, to that person. And actually just having one person on a massive team whose sole function is to champion sustainability and call things out and do it with a smile. I mean, there's often the phrase that gets used in the office about stubborn optimism. It is about sort of constantly projecting the can do, we can do this, we've got this, rather than sort of creeping up behind people and sort of screaming at them about sustainability. So I think it's just about having initially, because a lot of productions can't afford to have one person on the team. And I think that's kind of crackers. I mean, it should be the lowest, it should be the least expectation in all productions. There is one person banging the drum for sustainability. Our challenge in drama is on future projects is to try and get that person to be supported by 2, 3, 4, 5 people, depending on the scale of productions. And
what about the funding piece? So actually making it happen, because I'd love to move on to budget.
I think the funding thing, is interesting, isn't it? Because if you said to like health and safety is non-negotiable. As a producer, you lie in bed at night worrying about that, probably more than anything else. If something goes wrong in that area, it's like a catastrophe. So why, you go on a recce and you have somebody that's doing the risk assessments, who's solely there to make sure that all of that is covered off. Why doesn't sustainability fall within that area? It's the health and safety of our planet.
Yes, really good point.
It's a complete no-brainer. And if you said I get it in areas of production where the budgets are much lower, but in drama, if you said to producers, sustainability is non-negotiable, there isn't a producer in the UK who would say, on that basis, I'm out. What they'd say is,
yeah,
right, okay, right, sustainability is non-negotiable. So it's just bollocks that it can't be. In drama, I mean, you look at drama, you look at a network tariff for drama. I mean, we make some drama content for local broadcasters, and sometimes we might make content that's for sort of £400,000 an hour, which might seem a lot. In fact, in drama, that's tight. But there are network productions where they've got budgets of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million an hour. And then people are coming back saying, well, unless you pay us a little bit more, we can't really cover this off. It's not true.
It really is changing mindset. So budget, right? That is one of the biggest regions. Budget and time, one of the key barriers to actually implementing some solutions. So how much more expensive are some of these initiatives? There's a lot that's out there, but energy, transport, catering, waste handling, and hiring people. Is there a huge green premium? Is this accessible for only a few? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends. And I think if we step back a little bit, part of it is actually having visibility in budgets, because some things are more expensive, but some things can be a cost benefit. But quite often those costs are wrapped up in costs of other things. So in terms of budget line items and budget ownership across different departments, it's difficult to see how you can come to a neutral position. You know, just this HVO fuel is more expensive than diesel, but if you hybridize a generator, you can save fuel, but those costs aren't necessarily separated within your budget. So it's difficult to make that or to have that understanding. You know, train versus plane, unfortunately, is more expensive. But we did a bit of a calculation of a production that went to Milan for a week. It was 3 times more expensive to take the train, but 3 times less CO2. So again, it's being able to make these things visible so that you're better equipped early on, either to go back to your commissioner and say, this is what we've observed, what's your choice? Or, you know, a bit further down the line to be able to make those decisions early on as to where you're placing your budget.
Looking at carbon budgets in other areas. Anybody else?
In terms of, in terms of power and batteries, obviously everyone thinks batteries are expensive. Actually, they're not. You know, probably 2-3 years ago when they were first coming out, they were. The price has come down. They're very recyclable as well. I mean, that's a very key point. Kind of understanding their lifespan. If you look at you know, the price of a diesel generator versus the battery, it is comparison in terms of payback, in terms of fuel usage, and 2 or 3 years down the line. So it's looking at it probably in a longer term. But in terms of an upfront investment to change, obviously, you know, you have to pay out to purchase a battery as a facility company to make that investment. But the payback in hire is no different. I don't set the hire rates, but I don't believe battery hire rates should be any higher than diesel generator hire rates. Obviously, there are a lot more diesel generators out there, or ones that have been converted to HVO. So, but you know, I think ultimately it comes back to your point, really good point about COVID. And you know, we all managed to suddenly have a COVID supervisor on set, you know, during that time, and that person made those rules, and everyone did what they were told. Why can't we do that with a sustainability person on set to help drive those beliefs and culture changes through? And you know, we made those changes in COVID, so why can't we do it, you know, now? The solutions are there.
Picking up on something that was said in the session earlier on, I think it's brilliant that Creative Wales are saying that in the future, you know, awards from them will carry a sort of as a condition, you know, productions will have to show that they're being sustainable. I think the same should apply to the UK tax credit. I mean, producers are receiving, you know, non-recoupable finance, and it should come with that condition, and the bar should be set very, very high. It's like best practice. If you want free money from the Treasury, best practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
And in the Green New Deal transformation plan for Wales, there's another area that's covered, which is around access, and not all technologies or solutions are available across all the nations and regions. So creating that demand and talking to suppliers and saying, you know, this is what our production actually needs to be more sustainable, will help create those economies and create those markets that will provide your productions with the solutions. Just to touch on a few more things here before we open up to Q&A. What are some of the biggest solutions that we might not have covered yet that you think production should be leaning into?
Shall I take that one? So one thing that I haven't really mentioned is waste and circular economy. So a real no-brainer for us is, so wood waste, so, you know, in dramas and comedies is quite significant. And we're working with an organisation, Community Wood Recycling. I think we've repurposed or had 81 tonnes so far in the last report go through them. And they're a social enterprise, so they give jobs to disadvantaged groups. And I think set waste is quite often seen as contaminated because it's got nails and plaster and various things hanging out of it. Whereas community wood, because they give jobs to disadvantaged groups, they can like pull out all of that. And then I think over 50% of that 81 tonnes has stayed as wood within local communities as to where it was collected. And it's the same price, if not cheaper, than skips that would be going to incineration or landfill. So I think that's a real no-brainer. And then there's another organisation that we have been working with that is an auction house, and they come in and they take all sorts of stuff and then they sell it, and then we get money back. And they've taken the headache away. And there are some items that they don't necessarily work with, but they also work with the Ministry of Defence, and so they're used to their security and IP. And yeah, it's a really amazing way of actually getting, you know, some money back into the production budget.
Yeah, again, anywhere you can find co-benefits that multi-solve is a win-win.
But I just should really say, with end of life planning, what we're seeing at the moment that we need to transition away from is, you know, they get to the end, they're left with all the stuff, and then they're like, we've got 2 days, what do we do with this? And we're like, not a lot, because you haven't got much time. So we're trying to change that culture and build in end of life planning at the point of purchase, and are working on an initiative that's to be announced later, but hopefully will really help to change that culture and build in that thinking much earlier on.
That's an interesting point, because in the Albert calculator, we've now grouped materials and disposal together, so that when you're entering in the data, you can sort of start to think about, you know, something has to happen with these materials. Ideally, you wouldn't see whatever's going in to be going out to be disposed of. Hopefully you'll be disposing of less, and we'll be able to show that in the data, because it should be, you know, provided to the wider economy, local communities, to keep those materials in circulation for as long as possible. So just one last thought before Q&A. What gives you all hope that we can do this, that we can overcome the challenges that we've talked about today?
I think the technology's out there, and I think the passion is changing. And obviously, there's a lot of passion on this stage today, and hopefully, you know, everyone in the audience is kind of growing from that and learning from that. And I think we just keep educating, you know, gaining trust, getting people to change the way they work, really, because it is a shift in the way that we work. But you know, I think that's encouraging.
I think it's a very slightly, not what you just said. What I'm about to say is a slightly cheesy thing to say, but I have to say my kids give me most hope, because they call you out on it all the time.
Yeah.
Learning about it all the time in school, mystified that our generation is so, in their eyes, hopelessly slow and inadequate. And they're just going, why aren't you doing more? Your trousers are on fire, and you're behaving like, you know, it's just another day at the office. Like, you know, it needs urgency. So I look at my kids and I look at other people's kids, and I just think, yeah, they've got it.
Future generations.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So let's open it up to questions from the audience. Tilly?
Think about.
You have a microphone?
I'll use the mic. So in terms of what we're doing at Severn Screen, but I think has the potential to develop and replicate regionally across the UK, is we have a small scale circular economy project that we run in conjunction with a local teacher. He's the curriculum achievement officer for local Cardiff schools. So that has 2 benefits. One is that we can donate resources from set or props or costume or stationery or paint materials directly to schools and colleges in the area. It's all done online. Schools can look up, see what resources are available. But also in the longer term, we see it as an opportunity to build connections with a whole diverse range of young people in the area, to potentially use some of our donated sets as a place where we can connect with people and tell them about the industry and about the different skills that you can learn within this industry. So in terms of the broader social sustainability aspects like diversity and inclusion, we can address those things too. But I think in terms of circular economy and the urgency there, we're currently using 3 planets worth of our share of global resources. So we really need to be thinking better about what we do them at the end of life and keep them in use for as long as we possibly can. So if you're in the Cardiff area and you want to, you know, potentially tap into this idea as a concept, as far as donating resources out to wider communities, in the early stages of kind of developing it. So collaboration is key. And again, if you're in another area of Wales or indeed the UK and you want to hear more about what we're trying to achieve with that, do connect with me, because it's all about bringing people together with these shared goals.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Gentleman right there. Brown shirt. Just here.
Hello, I wanted to bring up, go back to that role. I think Ed, you mentioned it specifically about having people on the set or in the production who are banging on about sustainability, and that's their role. Could you speak a little more on that? Because I know there's companies now that's what they're doing, sustainability consultants and advisors for specifically the industry or not. Sorry, should I speak louder?
We don't even know you are.
Okay,
You
yeah,
are.
go on.
Sorry.
And I know there's now companies who are doing this. I know there's in-house, but there's not, I mean, it's still not really a defined roles in some ways. Could you speak a little bit more about that role and is there training? Where is that going?
I think the role is being defined from a standing start. I mean, over the last 2 or 3 years, we've gone from that it not being commonplace in the sector at all to increasingly being talked about. I think the important thing is that when you're in the run up to a production, everybody's busy. Everybody feels time poor. And we experienced it with COVID. If you said, listen, you know, we want to have a big discussion about design. We also want to talk to you about your COVID protocols. People would have a sort of meltdown. So HODs and teams feel time poor. And then when you say now you have to also think about sustainability, they can feel like they're being sort of hijacked or sort of held hostage to another thing. So I think it's I just think it's important to sort of have the right people skills, and to sort of just come into it sort of elegantly and have the conversation and focus on the positives initially, and then drag everybody along.
I'll sort of supplement that answer. So sustainability roles, there's a lot of interesting conversations being had within BAFTA Albert and BFI, BEC2, HOPs for Climate. Lots of people have been working on this, sort of standardizing job descriptions and key skills and finding out what those skill gaps are and how we can create interventions there. So it's a very live conversation for a very clear need. Any other questions? Neil? Oh, sorry. There you go.
James Price from Aberystwyth and Newey. I'm kind of developing on the last question. Lesley Torchin wrote a really interesting article about how the sustainability manager comes down quite low on the production hierarchy in traditional productions. And this seems, and I know of instances where it's written into the contract that sustainability managers aren't allowed to interfere with creative decisions such as the choice of equipment and that kind of thing. So this seems to be a kind of really big problem in terms of a barrier to be overcome. What do the panel think can be done in order to address these problems?
Well, I'd like to say that I think when you mentioned about you made the analysis between, or the comparison between COVID and the absolute sort of you must adhere to these rules and that has to be the way. We absolutely have to do the same thing with sustainability. And I think it's a case of, I'm not quite sure who bangs the drum on this one, but it has to be banged and it has to be loud, because you're absolutely right. Our kids know what we need to do, not know what we need to do, but they know the bigger picture and what's happening to our planet. And us now, if it's going to take another generation coming up through screen skills, coming up through the, you know, college and stuff, it's going to be too late. It's way, way, way too late. So we really do, and I think this is obviously a really good step. And there's more, and just we need more of this, more collaboration, and just a recognition that, yeah, we absolutely have to crack on and have it higher up the hierarchy, totally.
Yeah, Suzanne's got a comment on that one as well.
Yeah, I'll just come in. So just in relation to your earlier question as well, I think it's connected about what gives you hope. I feel like I'm in a really privileged position to be quite close. You know, my background is very much in production, but I sit with an amazing team within BBC Group, and I'm quite close to the team that are responsible for the net zero targets. And I don't think there's enough understanding about what net zero is, about what it means, what it's driving. Albert was created, I'm very privileged to be involved in the very early days, well ahead of net zero. It was leading practice at the time, but since then we've had the Paris Climate Agreement, we've got, you know, initiatives, science-based targets, and now, you know, all the broadcasters have now got net zero targets. And we are in quite a transitional period as an industry as to how we engage with net zero and how we roll that out. And we do have a complex supply chain. So it really gives me hope seeing the targets that are being set at broadcaster level and how it is taking a little bit of time, but to, you know, that trickle down effect with what those targets are then setting to production companies and will ultimately come down to the supply chain. You know, there's formalized organizations such as CDP, which is the Climate Disclosure Project. I mean, that at the moment is engaging with much bigger corporates at the moment, but will likely to come down to the smaller supply chain. But just in answer to the gentleman's question over there about, you know, there is a challenge now that often sustainability sits with quite junior members of production, and they will come up against challenges that are kind of out of their area of control. But there is this massive, really positive movement that's coming down slower than we would like, but that, you know, that is ultimately the change. But there's a theory of change that we've all seen those graphs of the emission factors that go up at a rocket scale, but there's actually various theories about the emissions of change, and that change will happen at the same speed. So there's huge change happening at broadcaster level, and it is coming down the line. So those sustainability coordinators will be empowered. It's just a little bit of time that we're meeting in the middle.
Brilliant. Have a look at the Green New Deal transformation plan. There are some specific areas mentioning, you know, theory of change. There's enablers, recommendations, outcomes, and there are very specific kind of groups that are highlighted as key, you know, stakeholders that will help that transition happen and help a more rapid uptake of those recommendations. So thank you so much to our amazing panel for all their experiences and insights. That's been really helpful today. There's more today to come around transport, education, engaging people. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, April, as well. Please thank April for us.